Okay, number one, they subtracted 4x from both sides, so that would be the subtraction property of equality. And then the next step, they added 12, so that's the addition property of equality. And then they divided by a -4, so that's the division property of equality. Okay, so it looks like using AirPods minimizes the sound of the tapping, so I'll be using AirPods from now on. All right, so let's move on. All right, solve the equation just by each step. So again, I put the properties on the right side here for you. So let's just do number 3 real quickly. So you got to write this on your paper, and then you got to solve it. So you all know how to solve it. So that's not the issue. The issue is that you can identify what it is you're doing. You have to give a reason for what you're doing. This is what you're learning in geometry. So you're adding 10. All right. So now you got 5x equals -30. So you added 10. So what is that? That's the addition property of equality. Okay. And then we're going to divide off the 5. So now you have x equals -6. And what did we do? It was the division property of equality. So you always state what you did after you've done it. Okay? So we added 10. We divided by 5. And that's our final answer. All right? Here's your answer. Okay, so now we need to do number 5. So let's just remove a lot of this stuff here. Okay, number 5. 2x minus 8 equals 6x minus 20. All right, so you do it and then turn this back on and check it out. So, subtraction property of equality. And that's -8 equals 4x minus 20. So we'll add 20. And we get 12 equals 4x. That's the addition property of equality. Now you can do things in different order. As long as you end up with the right answer, then you are good to go. So 12/5 equals x, divided by 4. So that's 3. The answer should be 3. So, and that was the division property of equality. And let's take a look at the answer for this one. So what we can see on here, what they did was they subtracted 6x to the left. So just like normal, we like to move the x's to the left. I just knew it was going to end up being positive x if we moved it to the right, but you just have to do one extra step in there, but all the properties are the same. All right, so I'm not going to explain all this all the time, so let's move on. Number 7, let's go ahead and do this. So 5 times 3x minus 20 equals -10. So you have the properties there, try to do it on your own, and then come back to this. So 15x minus 100 equals -10, so that's the distribution property of equality. So start drawing this line. This is our given. This is what 2-column proofs are going to look like. So now I'm going to add 100. And that's 15x equals 90. That's the addition property of equality. I'm abbreviating because I'm running out of room here. And then I divide by 15. And x equals 6. That would be the division property. Notice that you always state your reason after you've done it. All right? So let's do number 9. So number 9 here. We'll just continue here. 2 times -x minus 5 equals 12. All right? And that is a given. I'll move this column over a little bit here. So we're going to distribute. -2x minus 10 equals 12. So that would be distribution property of equality. Add 10. So it's -2x equals 22. So addition property of equality. and divided by a negative 2. And x equals a negative 11. So that was division, property of equality. Now let's take a look at both those answers. As you can see with those answers, they do match with what we have. Alright, moving on. Number 11. Let's get out of here. So let's start the process here. 4 times 5x minus 9 equals negative 2x plus 7. Alright, so again, everybody write given there. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and distribute twice. So that's 20x minus 36 equals negative 2x minus 14. So that's distribution property of equality. I'm going to add 2x to both sides. I'm talking like this because I'm at a business. 22x minus 36 equals negative 14. Do not forget that minus sign on the 14. Alright, so that's the addition property of equality. And now, again, let's add. So you're doing this to give yourself a heads up on what's coming. You're trying to get used to setting these things up. Again, addition property of equality. Because it's coming soon. We've got to get in the habit of writing like this. And then divide off the 22. So x equals 1. Why? Because of the division property of equality. All right, let's take a look at the answer. All right, so you have everything there just like what we just did it. All right, keep going. Number 13. All right, so now you got to describe what they did wrong. So let's take a look at that. What you should do is take a look at the problem and solve it, because you're actually supposed to do this, not just say what they did wrong. You're supposed to solve it correctly. So right off the bat, they added instead of subtracted, so subtraction property should have been first. Again, these are the most important problems in the whole book. And then we divide by 6, because you're supposed to solve it. So x equals 4. So that's the division property of equality. All right. And number 15. So again, let's start this correctly here. Remember, justify your steps. This is what it's talking about. We're going to solve for y. So instead of solving for x, we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're solving for y. So this is our given. I want you to write it just like this. So we're going to subtract 5x. And we get y equals negative 5x plus 18. That's the subtraction property of equality. And that's what y equals. And that is your answer. That was just one step. All right, going on to the next one. 17. So again, let's write it out. 2y plus 0.5x equals 16. And that is your given. All right, and what are we going to do here? We got to get y by itself. So we need to move this. So subtract a half x from both sides. That's the subtraction property of equality. Okay. And we get 2y on the left, and we get negative 0.5x plus 16. These two cannot go together because the 16 doesn't have an x with it. And now how do we get the y by itself? We are going to divide by 2 on both sides, or every term. I'd rather you write it like this. Divide that by 2 and divide that by 2. That's how you should do it. When you multiply or divide, you do it to every single term. Okay, so what do we have when we're done with that? Y is finally by itself. And what we have here, and you guys have to do this, 0.5 is, or negative 0.5 is the same thing as negative 1/2 over 2. 16 over 2 is 8. Now let's learn something and don't ever forget it. You can't have a fraction inside of a fraction. So you take the top, in this case it's a fraction, and multiply it by the reciprocal of the bottom. The bottom is 2 over 1, so the reciprocal is 1 over 2. So that is negative 1/4. All right, if you took your calculator and did negative 0.5 divided by 2, you'd get negative 0.25, which is negative 1/4. So our answer here is y equals negative 1/4 x plus 8. This should be your answer. And what's the reason? We have the division property of equality here. and then we simplified it to there. But as you can see, they used a decimal, and my rule for calculators is if there's a decimal in the problem, you may use your calculator. All right, but what I showed you right here, what I showed you right here, you've got to know how to do. All right, let's move on. Number 19. So again, we write the problem, 3y. That is our given. Please write it like this. And now what are we going to do? We got to get y by itself, so that means we need to remove the 12. That minus sign is on the 3, don't forget it. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. And that's the subtraction property of equality. And what do we have? We have negative 3y. Do not drop that negative sign. And we have 30x minus 6, not 8. Minus 6. Okay? And now to get y by itself, we're going to divide by a negative 3 every term. Division property of equality is how we get our answer. Y equals negative 10x plus 2. Make sure your signs are correct. And there's your answer. Number 21. Okay, so again, solve the formula and justify each step. So it doesn't matter if you have numbers or the quadratic equation. It doesn't matter what kind of equation you have. Just solve it the way you've been told by the properties. So what are we going to do here? We're going to solve for r. So this is all attached by multiplication, so we're going to divide off the 2 pi all at the same time because it's attached by multiplication. So what is that? That is called division property of equality. If you add and subtract, you're moving the whole thing. If you multiply or divide, you're separating things. So the answer is c over 2 pi equals r. R is by itself, and it's in the numerator. Now you're done with that one. Okay, and they just use the symmetric property to put the r on the left. You do not need to do that, but you do need to make sure you know the symmetric property. Okay, number 23. So now we're solving for n in this equation. So our equation is s equals 180 times n minus 2. All right, and that's our given. What are we going to do? We got to get n by itself. It's in the parentheses, so let's distribute and go from there. So this is going to be the distribution property. Distribution property. All right, so we get s equals 180n minus 360. Now let's add 360 because we got to get n. Got to get this by itself, so we got to remove the 360. So we're going to add 360 to both sides. Again, that's the addition property of equality. Okay, and we get s plus 360 equals 180n. Now to get n by itself, we're going to divide by the 180 every term. So let's just go ahead and rewrite this under each term. So we get s over 180 plus 360 over 180 is 2. And that equals n. That was the division property again. Okay? And again, you see that the n is on the left. So just to switch it, you have to say the symmetric property. Let's go ahead and move on to 25. And now, we have the perimeter formula here. And we want to solve for L. Solve the formula for L. Alright, so let's go ahead and set it up. B equals 2L plus 2W. That is our given. So, that's our term that we want. We need to remove this. It's attached by addition, so we subtract it. So, subtraction is once on each side. That's the subtraction property of equality. Okay, and what do we have? We have P minus 2W. Can't put those two together because have different variables, and that equals 2L. And now we're going to divide off the 2 to every term. That's the division property of equality. Okay, so we have P over 2, and the 2 over 2 is reduced to 1, so that's 1W equals L. And to keep up with what the book's doing, you can go ahead and put L on the left and say P over 2 minus W, and that's the symmetric property of equality. Or symmetric property, that's good enough. Alright, let's stop and take a look. Alright, so we get the correct answer right here, and then what they want you to do is find the length of a rectangular lawn with a perimeter of 32 meters. So now, because you have the length separated, you can plug in 32 for P and 5 for W. So the length is equal to 32 over 2 minus 5. 32 over 2 is 16. 16 minus 5 is 11. So the length is 11 meters. Okay. Number 27. Name the property of this equality. All right, so you have x equals y. So think about this for a second. X equals y is our given. They then say 3x equals 3y. What happened? Well, they must have multiplied, multiplication property, okay, something times both sides. They must have multiplied by 3 on both sides. Multiplication property of equality. Okay, number 29. So, what is this property here? Something equal to itself. Do not ever say symmetric property. Notice that it is not equal to itself. Okay, reflexive is equal to itself. When you look in the mirror, you see yourself. On the symmetric property, you see something else. Okay, so reflexive is you see yourself. So the reflexive property is the correct answer there. Okay, 31. So again, what are we looking at here? If the measure of angle A is 29 degrees and the measure of angle B is 29 degrees, then they both must be equal to each other. All right, so now you want to look and see what property this is. First of all, the reflexive property is just one thing. We know it's not that. Symmetric property, it's starting to look like that. So we have 3 columns of examples here. Don't look at one and say, oh, this leads to that one and that leads to that one. Don't do that. These are all separate examples. So look at them that way, and then you see that this looks an awful lot like that up there. All right? And so transitive property is what we see here, except for one thing. All right? You should say transitive property, but what they're going to tell you is that this is the substitution property. Okay? So when we're dealing with numbers, and you start to put something in for something else, that's substitution. And it's a very hard thing to understand which one's which, even though right here it shows almost the exact same thing. Okay? Notice that there are no numbers in this example of angles. All right? So when we replace a number with a letter or a letter with a number, replacing is really substitution. And I'll give you more examples of this as we go on. Okay? And there's the answer. Let's go on. All right. Now let's take a look at this. Take a second, think about it, and look at what you have over here. Okay? So notice you have AB is not equal to itself. It's equal to something else. And that thing is equal to it. So that's not the reflexive property. Reflexives, you're equal to yourself. There'll be a reason for saying that. Okay, what we have here is the symmetric property. Looks just like this right here. Okay? So that would be the symmetric property. All right. Okay. 35 is the property to complete the statement. We're using the substitution property here. So if AB is equal to 20, then AB plus CD is equal to substitute what you know and write it down. Okay? So if we're substituting a value for AB, then AB is equal to, AB plus CD is equal to 20 plus CD. There'll be a reason for doing that eventually. All right, that's substitution. Again, not transitive, that's substitution. 37, transitive property of equality. Now, notice there are no numbers here. At the moment, let's stick with what we're saying here, no numbers. If beginning is to middle, and middle is to the end, then you say the beginning is to the end. We do not substitute numbers. Okay, that's the transitive property. I forgot to show 35 there, and there's 37. All right, transitive property, you're going to use this a whole bunch this year. So start saying beginning is to middle, middle is to the end, and beginning is to the end. All right, moving on. All right, so now we have to show we are given that ABD is equal to CBE. So let's just draw these out here. ABD. So that's angle 1 and 2 makes up ABD. All right, I'm just leaving off the symbols at the moment. And then we have CBE. So CBE is 2 and 3. So if we add angles together, we can get a bigger angle, okay? All right, let's put our symbols in here. So we're just thinking through this problem. We're supposed to show that angle 1 and angle 3, angle 1 and angle 3 are equal to each other. Well, I see a transitive property here. So just briefly talking through how to set this up, we should be able to show that if the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2, that equals the measure of angle ABD. All right? So that is, I'm going to draw this here. That would be angle addition property. Postulate, sorry. Angle addition postulate. All right, we're adding two angles together, so this should be over here. So then we say the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3 is equal to angle CBE, the measure of angle CBE. Again, angle addition postulate. All right, now, what can we do? Let me write the other one up here. Angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle ABD. And we already know that these two are equal to each other. All right? So we can go ahead and say that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to the measure of angle CBE. Okay? That's substitution property. Because I substituted for what angle ABD is for CBE. Because that's our given. Our given is that those two angles are the same. So all I did was substitute CBE into that position. And I've moved it down to here. So now, you see, these two right here are the same. If those two are the same, I then can say the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to, this right here is equal to that because CBE is equal to CBE. The measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3. Okay? So those two are equal. And now I can subtract the measure of angle 2. So subtraction property of equality. And what do I end up with? Those are gone, and I'm left with the answer. The measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 3. Let's take a look at the answer. Okay, so you can see here, you have your given statements. Oops. You have your givens, and then you start adding angle addition. And these two are equal to each other. Okay, so we do substitution. We substituted ABD in for CBE. That's where we get this step right there. If those two are equal, you set those two equal and we subtract off the measure of angle 2. Just like I just explained it. Okay, moving on. Last one. All right, we're going to do 53 and 55 here. This is a review. Name the definition, property, or postulate. So take a look here. xy plus yz, xy plus yz. Hey, that's equal to x to z. 53, that would be segment, addition, postulate. Start learning these. Now 55. We're going to solve and justify each step. So now I don't have the properties up here. You're going to have to tell me. All right, so let's write it out here. 6x minus 2y equals 12. That's our given. Got to get y by itself. So we're going to subtract 6x. Subtraction property of equality. And we get negative 2y. Please do not drop the negative. That equals negative 6x plus 12. Please do not put those together. The 12 does not have an x. Do not put them together. So now we're going to divide off the negative 2 to every term. So y equals positive 3x minus 6. Make sure you pay attention to what we just did there. That's the division property of equality. Okay, good job. That's it for 2.4.